sometimes I say I don't know what I'm going to teach and I don't know what I'm going to share with you. This is one of those messages that is going to be new, fresh. Turn to your neighbor and say fresh. Turn to your neighbor and say fresca. So sometime we have a message that's edifying and it's review. Other times we have a message that is fresh. New revelation, new understanding. This is that kind of message. So you definitely want to be taking notes. Verse 23. Matthew 22. This does belong in the book, but I didn't put it in the book because I ran out of room. Matthew 22 and verse 23. The same day came to him the Tzaddukim. Who are the Tzaddukim? Who are the Tzaddukim? Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, and asked him, saying, Master, Moshe said in the Torah, if a man dies having no children, his brother shall marry his wife, and raise up Zerah seed for his brother. Now there was among us 7 brothers, and the first, when he had married a wife, he died, and having no children, left his wife to his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third also, all the way to the 7th. And last of all, the woman, she died also. Therefore in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be from the 7? For they all had her as wife. I want to make a statement and then I'm going to get into the teaching. Here's what I want to ask you. For all those who have been brainwashed by the church, that teach that plural marriage is just so men can have more sex. There are those women who have been brainwashed, teaching that those who believe and teach in plural marriage is just so that the man can have more sex. Well, smoke this one for a second with me, all right? We have a Torah commandment where if a man's brother dies and the brother and his wife had no children, the Torah commands the man to go into his brother's wife and to raise up children. Yes or no? Did we just read that? Yes or no? Now we just read? Let me ask you another question. What happens if the brother who is commanded to go into his brother's wife and raise up children for her and to preserve his brother's name in Israel, what happens if that man already has a wife? Brother Lloyd? That man is commanded to raise up children for his brother, so that his brother's name is preserved in Israel. What happens if that brother is already married? 1 plus 1 equals what? Now he has 2 wives. And Yahweh says, you're obeying my Torah. You know, because we come from a church mentality, we think, oh, the guy's got to be single. Every brother, every man in Israel who lost a brother must have been single. So because they must have been single, Yahweh allowed that man to raise up seed for his brother. Come on now, what happens if the man wasn't single? What happens if the man was married? Now he's got 2 wives. What happens if the man had 2 wives and he's got to marry his brother's wife? Now he has how many? So we got all this up here. That's true. That's true. It's in the Torah. We got all it up here. Question is, are we going to be Torah fans or Torah disciples? What happens when somebody actually walks in with 3 wives? Oh, now that's the true test. Oh, it's there, but we can't have it anywhere in our midst because, see, so then we will know if we're a Torah fan or a Torah disciple. But anyway, so that's a perfect example. That's not what I want to talk about today. Okay, some of you are going, good. But that's not what I want to talk about today. Verse 28. So then at the end, the woman dies, all the brothers died. Therefore in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be from the 7 brothers? Because they all had her as a wife. And by the way, the church has no answer for that, Britt. They have no answer for that. Because when a man has a brother and the brother dies and he's commanded to go into his brother's wife and raise up children, they say, well, we're not under the law. Oh, isn't that convenient? Isn't that convenient? You're not under the law. Isn't that convenient? Look at verse 29. Because otherwise they actually have to deal with it. Yeshua answered and said to him, you are led astray, not knowing the Kitvei HaKadosh, the scriptures, nor the power of Yahweh. Now pay attention, because I believe otherwise you might miss this. For in the resurrection, neither will they marry, nor will they be given in marriage, notice, but are as the heavenly melachim. What is melachim? Angels of Yahweh in the shamayim, in the heavens. But as touching the resurrection of the dead, have you not read that which was spoken to you by Eloha, saying, I am Eloha, the Eloha of Abraham, and the Eloha of Yitzchak, and the Eloha of Yaakov. Eloha, the Aramaic word for Elohim. He is not the Eloha of the dead, but of the what? Of the living. So in other words, Elohim, Yahweh Elohim, is not the Elohim of the dead man, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but he is the Elohim of the living Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are alive. So they were greatly ignorant of the scriptures, because all those 7 brothers were still alive. Did you getting this? You getting the correlation here? He's saying you don't know what you're talking about. He's not the Eloha of the dead, but he's the Eloha of the what? Of the living. So if Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are alive, guess who else is alive if they were saved and pardoned by the atoning blood of the Torah? The 7 brothers are also what? Alive. Can I hear a good amen? I said, can I hear a good amen? Amen. So, they didn't know the scriptures. Has anything really changed much? A lot of people don't know the scriptures. And I just gave you a perfect example how they don't know the scriptures. The brother had a brother. Now he goes and takes another wife. He's already married. He's got 2 wives. Yahweh doesn't send him to hell. He goes, you've done good. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. And those who don't understand it, because they don't know the scriptures. They don't have an idea. They think that kind of behavior is for the Muslims. Before there was a Muslim, there was a Jacob. Talk to me. Amen. Before there ever was a Muslim, there was a Yaakov. But that's not my point. The name of this message, Marriage in the World to Come. Look at verse 31. So as touching, circle that word in verse 31. Touching. Circle that word. Matityahu 22:31. As touching the resurrection of the dead, have you not read which was spoken to you by Eloha, saying, I am the Eloha of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I am not the Eloha of the dead, but of the what? Living. Yeshua answers these tzaddukim. Who are the tzaddukim? The Sadducees. Why were they called Sadducees? They always were sad about something, you see. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Yeshua answers them, listen, precisely according to their question. They asked about marriage in touching the resurrection. Verse 30, in the resurrection. Okay, they said, if 7 men had her as a wife, in the resurrection, whose wife will she be? You see that? Yes, Oscar, you see that? If 7 men had her as a what? Wife, in the resurrection, whose wife will she be? Can I hear a good amen? So Yeshua did not give them more than they asked. Notice. They asked about in the resurrection, verse 30, and verse 31, touching the resurrection. They asked about in the resurrection. They did not ask, listen, because if you don't listen carefully, I believe I'm going to lose you today. I know Yeshua can't lose any of his people, but I can. Okay? The Talmidim did not ask about marriage, Brit, after the resurrection. Are you with me, Chris? They asked about marriage in the resurrection, touching the resurrection. They did not ask about marriage after the resurrection. Can I hear a good amen? Baruch Hashem Yahweh. I didn't hear a good amen. From upstairs I did. So they did not ask about after the resurrection. What's marriage is going to be like after the resurrection. To verify that the Talmidim had asked the wrong question, as we often do, Yeshua says that they're asking, notice, only touched upon the resurrection of the dead. You see that in verse 31? Because they asked about marriage in the resurrection and not what? After the resurrection, verse 31, they asked touching the resurrection, but not wanting to know what happens to whose wife is she going to be when? In the Olam Haba. In the Olam Haba. Whose wife is she going to be? They didn't ask that, did they? Did they, Janet? They didn't ask that. In the Olam Haba? They didn't say, in the Olam Haba, in the age to come, in eternity, in the Atid Lavo, whose wife is she going to be? They asked in the resurrection, touching the meaning, you want a shallow answer, because you're going to get a shallow answer, because you asked a shallow what? Question. Touching. You don't want to go deep, so I'm not going to take you deep, because you didn't want to go deep. You want to talk about in the resurrection, that's not deep, that's easy. So in the resurrection, touching the resurrection, so let me give you some answers according to your question. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Now, what can angels, let's go back here. Let's go back here to angels, verse 30. In the resurrection, they neither marry or are given in marriage, but are as the heavenly malachim. What is malachim? Angels of Yahweh in the Shamayim. Question. So in the resurrection, in the Olam Haba, in eternity? No. When? When? In the touching the resurrection. They will be like the Melachim. Well, what do Melachim do that we cannot do? So in the resurrection, we are going to what? Fly up out of the grave and into the presence of Yeshua, and then return with Yeshua to the earth. So we're going to be like the Melachim. We're going to fly out of the grave by the power of Almighty Yahweh. Can I hear a good amen? Amen. So we will be like the Melachim. What can the Melachim do? The Melachim can what? The Melachim can fly. They asked the wrong question. They didn't ask about marriage in the Olam Haba or in the Atid Lavo. They asked about in the resurrection, touching the resurrection. Give us, as far as the resurrection. So he said, well, in the resurrection they will not marry or be given in marriage, because they will be like the heavenly what? Melachim in the Shamayim. What can Melachim do that we cannot? They can fly. In the resurrection, apparently we are flying, and flying very fast. Can I hear a good amen? Yeah. In the resurrection, we are flying.